Hey, what's up guys, Gypsy, and today we are back with BBL week 4, and this week we're going to be taking on a guy called Choice CJ. I'm sure many of you guys already know who this guy is. He's a really friendly guy, and he's pretty well known throughout the draft community. He plays in a bunch of different leagues from what I understand, and my man CJ drafted probably, I'd say like arguably the most threatening team. You could say like mine and the team that Omega Jolteon drafted with Mega Mewtwo, with Mewtwo and Mega Lop is really up there. But this team as well, this team has Arceus Dark and Mega Medicham. So that core of offense right there is very difficult for a lot of teams to prep for. And this league does allow baton pass, so you can baton pass into Arceus Dark with Mega Medicham. So that is definitely a strategy that CJ has used a few times so far in the season already. And he's really capitalized on the opponent's counterplay to Medi being like a fat psychic and just bringing Arceus in safely like that. So it's going to be a really interesting game. He actually opted not to bring the Medicham. You see also we're playing on Showdown. Unfortunately, just due to time constraints, CJ had to go away. Like I wasn't free a lot of the time. A lot of the week we were supposed to play, and then when I could play, CJ went away camping. So it didn't really sync up this week, unfortunately. So we are here on Showdown, but we're going to get the match done, and next game hopefully should be back on Wi-Fi. So as you can see, he opted not to bring the Medicham and instead opted to bring I guess Arceus in its slot. I kind of expected the other few mons. I felt like Medi could come because it just baton passed freely into Arceus, but yeah, he didn't choose to bring it, and he's chosen to bring a pretty interesting team. Arceus may be like a defensive check to my Ho-Oh, so it could be like a bulkier set with Roost to prevent him from staying in defeatist range. It could be like a lead rock set, although he does have Pilot Swine, which kind of makes me think that's more than likely going to be his rocker. But he's definitely brought an interesting team, and he's brought the Sizzle, which on paper like isn't the best matchup versus me because I've got Ho-Oh, but if he can remove Ho-Oh, it can be a really solid win condition for him with Bullet Punch in the late game if he can get rid of Ho-Oh and weaken my Lando. So definitely an interesting squad, very threatening. I'm going to have to play around it well. The team we have this week is a Life Orb Weavile. I've got a Scarfed Lando, which can really put in work, especially once Arceus is removed. He doesn't have any EQ immunities, so that's really nice. And then I've got a bulky Magina with Z Focus Blast on this set, so I am able to lure stuff like the Heatran, the Pilot Swine, and can do decent damage to the Scizor as well. And then I have a Life Orb Latias. I'm actually mixed on this set, and I do have EQ for the Heatran. I think I'm hasty on this Lati, so I kill stuff like Heatran if it's just offensive. And then I've got T-Bolt and Draco, as well as Defog. So I'm running double Defog again for Ho-Oh. We want to keep those rocks off at all costs. And then I have a CM Mega Bro with Scald and Ice Beam. And then in the last slot, I do have a pretty standard Ho-Oh here with the Roost. And I Roost 3 attacks in this set, actually. So yeah, it can really put in the work in this game. So we're going to lead off with Slowbro, anticipating him to want to lead off with more than likely his Pilot Swine to get rocks up, because that's typically how people play versus a team with like a Zard or a Talon or a Ho-Oh. So we are going to get to far for Skull. We can fish for a burn on the Prim as he does bring it in here, but unfortunately we don't get the burn, as he does reveal to be like max HP and leftovers. So this is pretty nice for us because he's not Specs, so we don't have to worry about that. We didn't bring Pharaoh, but had he been Specs, it obviously would have been pretty nasty to play around. Would have had to pivot between Ho-Oh and Slowbro to determine which move he wanted to lock himself into in Magina. So the fact that he's not Specs is nice, but it does mean that he's more than likely going to be a defensive set aimed at taking on stuff like my Weavile and potentially chewing a hit from Ho-Oh. So I'm going to go hard into my Magina here, scouting for the Toxic, as he makes a nice play into his Sizzle. Also, I guess, scouting for the Toxic, as well as me going for the Psyshock there, as Sizzle would have been able to eat up any one of those hits. So he's going to go into his Sizzle here, and I'm just going to hard Focus Blast, anticipating his Sizzle to outspeed my Magina, because I'm not running a ton of speed on this, and probably go into either his Pilot Swine or his Heatran. But we actually outspeed, and we are going to get a nice chunk off on this Sizzle, which is going to be important for Lando taking him out later with EQ, as now he's going to bring in his Heatran. I'm going to go into my Lati here as he goes for a Magma Storm. Now this Heatran is one of his Z move users, so it could well be Z Solar Beam for my my Slowbro, but it's more than likely Z Dark Pulse, because that is a way of hitting both Latias and my Slowbro, which are two fine switch-ins to his Heatran. And I am anticipating him to be like Stone Edge more than likely on this set as well to be able to hit Ho-Oh. So he could even potentially be Continental Crush it's kind of a reach considering I do have a Latias, but that's something to watch out for. So this turn I am just going to go for the hard EQ, as he does make the play back out into his Primarina. Really nice play by CJ, scouting for that. He had no reason to not make that switch there. As now I'm going to go back into Magina as he goes for the Scald. So I go Magina on the off chance that he wanted to go for a Toxic. I felt like Moonblast was more than likely his play, expecting me to go into my my Slowbro once again, but he makes a nice play and goes for the Scald, and he gets rewarded here with a burn, which is pretty unfortunate for us, as yeah, health on this Magina is going to be pretty important in this game in order for it to check stuff like his Darkrai, his Arceus Dark, I should say, and to be able to take a hit later on from stuff like his Scizor if he's offensive. So we are going to go out to Ho-Oh here, as he does make the switch into Heatran. This was really nice. The Heatran covered me going for really anything with my Magina. I wasn't clicking Focus Blast that turn on a Primarina, and Heatran also covered me going into Slowbro on another Scald. So Ho-Oh kind of catches him there, and because I am so bulky on this Ho-Oh, I am able to easily live defensive Scalds from his Primarina. So he's going to go back into his Heatran, as this turn I am just going to go again for the safe EQ. I didn't want to risk him staying in and clicking Stone Edge on a Brave Bird, and I don't have Sacred Fire on this set, so I wouldn't even be able to punish the Archeops there. So I'm going to go back out into my Bro, as he does go for the U-turn. He's going to crit me here, but it's not really going to matter because we are going to get most of it back with the Regenerator. But the reason why it kind of sucks there is because I was in range of a Adamant Choice Banded U-turn after that crit, so it did kind of force my hand here. But either way, Ho-Oh was a pretty safe switch in versus this Scizor here. So he's going to take this turn to go out to his Arceus Dark here, and this kind of screams Edge, because you don't just bring this Mon in on a Ho-Oh. Even if he's Calm Mind, he can't safely set up. I could be anything on this Ho-Oh, and he doesn't know my set yet. So this kind of screams to me that he's more than likely Edge, and he's not just clicking Judgment right off the bat here anyway. He's going to at least try and boost up. So I'm going to switch hard into my bulky Scarflando, which can take any hit, as he does go for the Stone Edge, and he's unfortunately going to crit me. Without the crit, obviously he's intimidated. The Edge would have done like 20 something percent. So that is really going to limit the usefulness of my Lando. Now I'm going to have to play it a lot more conservatively, whereas had he not crit, I could have brought it in a lot safer versus stuff like his Archeops or his Scizor. So gonna have to play my Lando a bit more safely now. So gonna go for the U-turn here, as he does switch out into his Partiswine. And this turn I go out into Magina, which really does scream Z, but he was faced with a tough choice here, because if he goes into Primarina and I'm like Z Twinkle Tackle, then he just loses his Primarina, which is his best Weavile answer on his team, his best Weavile switch in. And on the off chance that I wasn't Z Focus Blast, or that I overpredict here, he's actually going to stay in and I guess go for EQ or go for Stealth Rocks, but I am going to bop him here with all that pummeling. That was a pretty hard turn for CJ. I don't think that was as easy as you might initially think. Kind of a lot went into that turn, and we definitely thought about it for quite a while on both sides. But we get him there with the Z move, and he is going to go down, as he's now going to bring back in his Heatran. And this turn I am going to go out to Ho-Oh, as he does just fire for another Magma Storm. I've gauged from that damage just then on Ho-Oh that he's not max special attack, and he's more than likely some sort of Lure Berry or Z move on this set with some bulk. He could also be Chople on this set, which is important to keep in mind. So I'm going to go for EQ here, and it's going to do a nice chunk to Primarina, as this turn I am just going to fire for Brave Bird, as he does overpredict and clicks Moonblast, expecting me to switch out. But like I said, Ho-Oh is so fat that I think I took like 30 something from his Scald, so that's crazy. As I'm going to Brave Bird again, and we get a crit versus the Archeops, which is going to put him in Defeatist range. So that's a bit of justice, I guess, making up for the earlier burn on Magina. But even though he is in Defeatist range, it's not going to like mean that Ho-Oh's out of range of a Head Smash or a Rock Slide. So we are going to switch out here. Going to go into Magina, as he does just click the U-turn. So CJ's playing his pivoting mons like his Scizor and his Archeops really well. He's getting the momentum, and it's forcing me into a spot where I have to really kind of play out of my mind to get around his Heatran here. So we go, you see that turn we go into Latias on his Stone Edge. So I'd shown Lati to be my initial Heatran switch in, then I'd showed Ho-Oh, then I'd shown Latias again. So the reason I went Lati there is because if he did have Edge, I felt like he was going to go for it there. He knows that my Ho-Oh more than likely outspeeds his Heatran, and the fact that I willingly went it last time versus this Heatran led me to believe that he'd pull the trigger this turn. As we get him here, with my laddie, and I'm just going to click T-Bolt this turn because even though his Heatran stays in here, it gets damage off on this thing, and it reveals whether or not he is a leftovers variant or whether he's Z-moves. So I'm gonna go for the T-Bolt here, and I get the full power, which is really nice because now Meginna can fire for hit, and Meginna can fire for Focus Blast if it's ever in versus this Heatran without fearing it outspeed it. And Slowbro can also go for the Calm Mind up versus it if I need to. So he's going to get fully powered here, and this turn he's going to switch out to Sizzle on my EQ. And Sizzle's going to get crit here by the EQ. And this one really was pretty unfortunate for CJ, because if I get Rocks up, which I don't actually have Rocks, but like he doesn't know it at this point, if I get Rocks up, then this thing is going to only be able to switch in a couple more times. And I'm pretty sure he's Choice Band Scissor at this point. I don't think he has Roost on this set, just based on the way he's playing and based on the damage. The earlier U-turn damage versus my Meginna, he kind of revealed to be Adamant Band, so that crit there is definitely annoying for him. But I do have a pretty hard spot, like an amazing stop to this Sizzle in my Ho-Oh, as he's now going to bring in his Arceus, and this thing is a problem. So I'm going to go back out into my gear, as he's just going to go for the Judgment, making the read that I wasn't going to stay in with Ho-Oh. Again, he's playing this Arceus really aggressively, but it's working out for him here, because I kind of have to conserve my Ho-Oh because it's so important in the same game. So going to go back out into my Lando here, as this turn I am just going to go for the U-turn, as this is going to give me my Weavile to just click knockoff here, and something's going to drop or get to a KO'd. So he's going to sack off his Primarina, which is one less Lando sack, and at this point I'm seeing my endgame is a combination of Lando and Weavile and Ho-Oh cleaning up. So he's going to go for the Dark Pulse with Heatran this turn, and this is interesting because I've got my Weavile in versus the Heatran. I'm just going to go back a turn. And like I mentioned earlier, this Weavile's Life Orb, and it does have low kick, so it does kill max HP variants of Heatran from the range of health that it's at. But the fact that he brought it in so willingly versus my Weavile, knowing the fact that I'd shown Life Orb, he knows I'm offensive, and he hadn't shown an item, led me to believe that this could potentially be Chople. And even though it's more than likely going to be Z Dark, like I mentioned earlier, if he is Chople and I lose Weavile here, I lose one of my guaranteed ways of getting a huge chunk of damage off on Arceus, which puts it in range of any attack from my Lando. So Arceus is the main threat at this point. Weavile is still really important to take it down. It's one of the two pieces of my team, along with Lando, that can get the damage off on it that I need. And losing my Weavile here to the Heatran, if he is a Chople variant, really is not the play. As tempting as it was to just stay in here, preserve a sack in the back, preserve Luddy as a sack, I am going to make the switch, and he's actually going to go for the Dark Pulse and take out my laddie on the switch. And this led me to believe that he may not even have been Chople. He was probably Z Dark, and he expected me to go into laddie there. I guess he just didn't expect me to have low kick, or he didn't think a low kick would kill, but it definitely killed max HP variant there. So I can't tell if that was I haven't seen his team, so I don't know if that was just like a really good bluff, or he didn't think I'd have low kick. But low kick makes a lot of sense for Arceus Dark, of course. So either way, it works out for CJ there, and it's a really cool kind of dynamic in this match. So now I'm going to go back out into my Lando, and I am just going to click Super Power because it does kill Heatran from this range. I don't think he's Chople at this point based on the play he just made with Heatran. And Archeops is going to go down, so he no longer has an EQ immunity. And Sizzle comes in. Sizzle dies to -1 super power from this range, but again, if he clicks BP at -1, I am going to go down with my Lando, and Lando is, like I've just been saying over and over again, really important in this endgame. So he's going to make the really nice play in U-turn, expecting me to preserve Lando. He knows that it's probably one of my win cons, and I'm not willing to sack it at that point. So Ho-Oh's going to come back in, and at this point I'm thinking, alright, I can't risk Ho-Oh with the edge here. He could certainly overpredict and go for the Judgment, expecting my Lando to come in. And that obviously wouldn't do much to Ho-Oh, and I could get an attack off versus it. But if he goes for the edge and I leave Ho-Oh in, and I lose one of my best ways of killing his Sizzle and his Heatran. Like Ho-Oh literally 1v1s his last two mons. So my play here is to go into Slowbro, sack it off, go into Lando, click U-turn, get a kill with Ho-Oh, and rinse and repeat until he doesn't have enough sacks to outplay Lando and Weavile. So I'm going to go Slowbro here, as he does make the play of going for Judgment. As CJ is making some really nice reads. But now Weavile's inside, and I can just click low kick and claim a kill if he wants to switch out. But he does choose to stay in here and take 70 from that low kick, which means his Arceus is now in range of anything from my Lando. And I'm going to go for the EQ here, as Heatran is going to come in. And this match is going to come down to an interesting situation. So he's got his Scizor in. Though I am not at -1 defense, if he is banned Scizor, it does take me out here because he's not intimidated. And Adamant banned Scizor is really, really strong. So if he takes out my Lando here, then he has to hit an edge versus my Ho and he wins the game. If I go into Ho and he bullet punches, I win the game. If I go into Ho and he U-turns into Arceus, he's then faced with a 50-50 where he has to predict my Lando coming in, or and go for Judgment, or press Stone Edge and kill my Ho. But the thing is, if I go into Lando, regardless of whether he catches it with Judgment or clicks Stone Edge, I get the -1 attack versus his Arceus. And then the following turn, my Ho can live a Stone Edge at -1, and I can actually roost stall his Stone Edges. But if I go into Lando and he Stone Edges and I U-turn back out into my Ho, I can preserve Lando in the back as a way to win the game with Scarf U-turn. So ultimately, I had a few more outs if I preserve Lando here and go Ho. Even if he makes the read of going U-turn here, it's still kind of more odds in my favor of winning this game. I have more pathways to victory than if I just lose Lando here. So I am going to make the Ho play, as he's also been playing really aggressively all game. So I felt like here he'd play a bit safe, he'd play conservatively. He only has one chance to win the game, and that is by getting that play right. And we get in there with the Ho, and we are going to take him out here with a Brave Bird. So I hope that made sense, that kind of endgame discussion. Essentially, like, me going Ho there left me with at least 2 ways to win versus him staying in and bullet punching my Lando and me just losing on the spot to Arceus. So yep, now I'm going to go into my Lando here to get the Intimidate drop. He's not going to click Judgment here. If anything, he's going to recover. And by me getting the Intimidate drop off on it, my Ho can actually 1v1 it. But he is actually just going to go for the edge here, and we take that really nicely. So 22%. Lando chewing that up, and we are going to take him out here with Superpower. So that was a really exciting game versus CJ. I think he played it really well. He brought a really powerful team. Even without the Medi, he was able to put a lot of pressure onto my Slowbro with stuff like his Scizor and his Arceus. And yeah, it came down to some pretty intense turns. So I've got a strong feeling we're likely to play again in the playoffs. And although our teams will probably be pretty different by then with free agents, it's going to be a lot of fun to take them on again. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Drop a like if you did, and let me know what you guys thought of this exciting 2-0 match in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time.